I want to talk about something that didn't happen during the Egyptian revolution. Now, I really understand how difficult it is not to hate the police right now when you're protesting peacefully and you feel this indignation of this unjustified violence by the police. I really understand the reaction that causes. I also understand that it's very important to go beyond this reaction. Let's go beyond this reaction and let's try to identify with the police. Now, who are the police? The police are generally young people that don't have much education, that don't have much culture, that are indoctrinated very heavily, that are in a patriarchal system, where they are abused within this system, where they're taught not to think, where they're taught to behave like robots. They're often very poor and desperately in need of the money. Nobody cares about the conditions that they're working in. There's coming many reports from Istanbul that the police sent to Istanbul are sleeping on the floor, on their shields, that they are eating spoiled food, bad food, that they are working 50 hours, 100 hours without stopping. What does this do to the police? This dehumanizes the police. This makes it much more difficult for the police to empathize with another person, especially another person asking for their rights, when the police don't even have their rights, when the police have been taught, even though they're abused within this system, they've been taught that in this system they are one little bit above the rest of the people, even though in this system they are abused terribly. We can begin to understand the complicated mentality that's happening with the police. Now, if we step further out of the circle and look even more objectively at the social condition of the police and what protesters are asking for, it becomes very obvious that the police and the protesters have the same enemy. And it becomes very obviously absurd that the police and the protesters might be fighting, just as what happened in Egypt. Now, what didn't happen in Egypt was there was either little or no effort, or I mean it certainly didn't work if there was, to get the police on side with the protesters. I'm not sure what's going on in Turkey in this respect. I mean, I've done some investigation online and I've asked a lot of you who have been adding me, and it seems like not a lot. I think it's of utmost importance to contact the police that you see sleeping on the street, the police that you see around, with some written material explaining in a simple way how in fact you are on the same side and how the protesters are fighting also for the rights of police. Now, somebody told me about the conversation that they were having with one policeman, and the police were saying, yes, you know, we're not against you, we don't want to do this, but we have to do this. And they spoke and they made friends and they decided, you know, okay, we will fire the gas, but we will fire them to the floor. There have been other police that have quit. There have been various police officers that have committed suicide. Speaking of police, that have committed suicide because they don't want to participate in this violence. So they're not just machines. They are human beings in a psychological state which does not benefit them. It's a psychological state that does not correspond to their social class, to their position, to the situation they're in, and they need help to get out of it. So how can you do this? Other than contacting the police, another thing you can do is set up some kind of way to promote that the police leave the force. Now, how could you do this? There's many ideas that could be done. It could be put on the list of requirements from that the protesters are making, that the policemen that leave the force because they don't want to attack protesters be reinstated. You can put that as one of the demands of the revolution, that police that leave are reinstated. In this way you show the police that there is a place for them in the new Turkey. You also, it's very important that this is not one in spite of the police. Because when they give this first force victory, and there will be a first force victory that will come soon. The idea will be for everybody to go home, like I spoke about in my first video, and then start picking off the main organizers, the most present people, picking them off one by one to divide the society. Now, in this state, it's very, very important that if this begins, that people reclaim the rights of any individual as if it was their own. The mechanism of picking them off, though, is going to be the police, mainly. Now, if you manage to divide the police force in the sense of the police that understand the situation, being on side of the protesters and not violently in a passive resistance, then it becomes much more difficult for the police force to be used to pick off protesters or organizers one by one when everybody leaves the square, because within the police force you will have this huge number of police that have been reinstated following their refusal for violence towards the protesters. So developing on this idea, wouldn't it be wonderful and shocking for the whole world to see protesters protesting for the rights of police? To suddenly have an organized protest in Taksim or all around the country, fighting for the rights of these poor young people in the police force that have been indoctrinated to believe that we are the enemies, that are being fed this hatred, that are being treated horribly and abused and don't have any rights in their working environment. Wouldn't it change the whole, wouldn't it shock the whole system of this uprising to do something like this? This is something I really, really believe in. It's something that didn't happen in Egypt, because we were blinded too much by hate. It was a great era, because then when the main force of the protest people did go home, then the mechanism of the police force was still very, very much of the state. And the point is, the police force needs to be divided. The reason why I say divided is because not all of the police are going to agree with this. Now, as long as this division is not violent and it's a peaceful division, then this could really serve the aims of the revolution. Now, part of what the government is doing now, they want to break the spirit, they want to surprise you, they want to confuse you. They say that there's not going to be any raids for 3 days and then there's a raid. They want to break the spirit in this way. Now, how could you confuse the government? Doing something like this with the police. Solidarity with the police. Solidarity with the robots that they are sending to the square to kill you all. I think that is one of the most interesting and effective turning points that maybe could come about in this revolution, and something that Turkey could do differently to the rest of the region. There is already so many things you are doing so differently, and it's wonderful. I really can't believe all of the information that I'm getting. I'm so proud of all of these people, how they've doing these such amazing things. I think another thing that's very important to mention before I leave you is that don't lose the sense of joy. They want you to lose the sense of joy. The occupation has to stay something joyful, to do activities in the square, to do learning workshops, to do dance, to do the music, everything that you're doing already, everything that I'm seeing already, keep doing it. It's wonderful, because you have to reclaim this freedom with joy. Joy destroys the fear, and the fear divides us. So with this joy we're coming together, and when people are not scared anymore, we're unstoppable. Good luck, keep going, I will keep helping however I can, and stay safe.